So today we have a very, very special guest, and it's Stewart Pearce. And he was very close friend of Diana, and he was her voice coach and prepared her for certain speeches that she did, and he gave her advice and really helped her throughout the later years of her life. And I would just like him to quickly introduce himself and to tell you what he really does in an in-depth level. So please.
Well, thank you for inviting me onto your interview program. You've already really sort of identified what I do. Rather than going into an intense biography, I feel that the spirit that brings us together is the spirit of Diana, and specifically that I just published this book, Diana, The Voice of Change. So what I did with Diana was to, through the last 2 years of her life, allow her to feel that she could be the voice of change that she wanted to be as the humanitarian with all of her charitable endeavors. And that, as we know, that at the same time, Diana, as a woman, was often feeling very sensitive about the nature of the way that her power was explored in the world as an empath. And so my role was to provide her with skills of being able to understand how she could express her empathy, but not feel constantly attacked or violated or affected by the energies of other people's opinions. So I helped her with her voice, but I also helped her with her presence and how she could move forward in the world to define all that she wanted to define in the newness of the way that she was shaping her career, because obviously when I met her, she had moved away from the royal family and was no longer the Princess of Wales, but was Diana, the Princess of Wales. You know, she didn't lose her royal title totally, but the HRH was taken from her.
Yeah, and again, that in my opinion is not so rightly done, because she deserves to keep her title even through her passing, and her legacy should be able to continue as the Princess of Wales. And you prepared her for the media, and you prepared her to speak out and to be herself. And after she became this new image of herself after leaving royal family, the media became such a massive part of her life, sadly more negatively than positively. And Diana really promoted this kindness, empathy, and compassion upon everyone who followed her and who really supported her. Now, today there is sort of a blame culture at present. And do you feel there is enough done regarding kindness and equality within the media?
Well, the media is not based on kindness and equality. The media is based on other aspects of human nature. I just want to go back to something you just said about Diana. Diana was actually not vilified by the press when she was alive. She was very supported by the press. I think the aspect that you're talking about is the fact that her presence became so radiant that she was hounded by the photographers known as the paparazzi. And many people believe, because it became very irksome for her, it became very uncomfortable for her, that the paparazzi led her to her death. I think that's the bit that you're talking about. But the press per se were very much in support of Diana, even though she went through this huge transition of moving from being an integral member of the royal family into being a very separate entity. She needed to be that. And therefore, the seeming loss of HRH was not for her any diminution of her status. It was merely a transition into a different way of being. But after all, her name was Diana, Princess of Wales. It wasn't Diana Spencer. You know, she still had that royal association.
Yeah.
If that had been taken away, then I feel there would have been a lot of controversy and difficulty for the royal family. I
Yeah.
just wanted to return to that, because historically, it's not accurate to say that she was hounded in a malicious way by the majority of the media. They were in celebration of her. The difficulty was that she found the irksome, uncomfortable, invasive conduct of the photographers challenging. And I had personal experience of that with her on a number of occasions, and they could be vicious. I mean, they would swear at her just to get a reaction. Today, we're living in this unfortunate but very necessary social mechanism called a blame culture. It's come about as a result of the release of the shadow in our natures and the shadow within the collective substance of our peoples around the world, which means that you see the darker aspects of our lives have always been pushed aside emotionally or psychologically. They've been pushed down. And as we go through this immense emancipation of our peoples, which allows us to be able to find equity and parity in our roles throughout life. It allows us to be able to explore the geographical mobility of our lives. When I was your age, people didn't travel in the way that they travel today to explore other cultures. This is a very relatively new thing, and particularly for those people who were seemingly socioeconomically depressed, what we used to call the working class. I mean, people didn't go to Italy for their holidays or Spain for their holidays or Mallorca for their holidays. What they did was they went to Butlins. So the very fact that this whole geographical mobility has taken place means that we become aware of this global village. This is just one of the effects of the expansion that we're all going through. But as a result, also, the cap has come off the shadow. The shadow is the anger that people feel, the dispossession that people feel, the disenfranchisement that people feel. You experienced it yourself, the gross bullying, simply because you were different. You were bullied. And actually, what they were really seeing, as I know you know, is that they weren't actually seeing what was happening to your face. But what they were actually seeing is the immense sensitivity that you have and the courage that you carry yourself with as you move forward in life. That's what they were really seeing. And you were reminding them of their own lack of courage. That's always the case with the bully. Anyway, the list goes on and on and on and on of the effects. It's most unfortunate, but unfortunately, it's also necessary so that we can actually make a choice, because consciousness means choice. Happiness is a decision, it's not a condition. We make a choice of, do I want to be part of that, or do I want to be part of this?
Yeah.
Do you see? And I feel that that's what the instrument at the moment, because we're recording in early September of 2021, the instrument of Harry and Meghan removing themselves from the royal family because of the oppression that they experienced, not necessarily from the members of the royal family, but from the organization, the patriarchal organization around them, which is called the firm, or what Diana called the men in grey suits. That they've moved away, making their bid of freedom because they were no longer willing to be oppressed. But as far as the British press is concerned, not the US press, only the UK press and the Australian press, they have been unbelievably vilifying. So it seems to me that the nature of Harry and Meghan's bid for freedom has created this screen on which the projectile consciousness of all the darkness is literally spewed out. This is a necessary healing that needs to take place within society. The important question is, are those people who are perpetrating the vilification and the viciousness, are they reminding themselves of who they are? And, with the movement of, for example, Piers Morgan, who has been very bitter in his vitriolic attack of Meghan, that he was summarily disciplined by the press association. And so he must be chastened by that. Do you see? We are all, in this time of equity, we are all dispensable. The question is, what choices are we personally making to not vilify, not to be gross, not to be vicious, but to live compassionately and empathically, realizing that love is all there is. There is a secret energy that we all share. which is empathy. And if we can just remain empathic, that electricity spreads through all of the people that we are with, even if they are the aggressors. Eventually, it affects them, and they cower and they become humble, and they remember who they truly are, not what they become. The question is, do we have the courage to live the empathy? I believe this time is the revolution of the empaths. And I believe that that's why Diana's spirit is so alive at this time.
Yeah, and we really do need to take a step in Diana's shoes as well, and we need to look at what she did in her life and really, try and live up to that because there is a lot of oppression in this world, and I exactly as you said, it's with bullying and what my experiences were, and yeah, I 100% agree with you. So obviously you are an amazing person and you've helped so many people, um, including Diana herself. So I would really like to know who was your influencer, who really gave you that push in life to be where you are today and really helped you?
Wow, it's a really interesting question. I mean, there have been so many people, to be honest, who have been supportive of me and indeed still are, because moving forward into the public arena needs courage and bravery and so forth. What carries us forward is the conviction of our statement. Conviction is a force multiplier. So it develops courage and willpower. In these times, I'm thinking a lot about my mother, who has been dead for many, many, many years, because she always carried unconditional love in her heart and was constantly reminding both my brother, who's a year older than I, and myself about how we can be loving, gracious, respectful, and compassionate. And then the other person that I remember, because of his way of delivering very powerful, significant, and sincere statements, particularly about my willfulness as a child, was my grandfather, who was a Norfolk farmer, a man of the soil. And he was very silent, was Grandpa. But he would always admonish, not by shouting or hitting, which is what my father did, but he would always call one over and deliver the most extraordinary statements about how to conduct oneself. And I mean, I was very young. I was 9, 10, 11, 12. I think he died when I was 12. Yeah. And then there are lots of glorious people, but on a very personal level, there are these two wonderful beings.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And also, family are always going to be there for us. And whenever we need that, seek out for help, and whenever we need that extra push in life, our family is always going to be there for us. And as you said, your mother and your grandfather really, really helped you be who you are today. And I can only imagine how great and amazing they were as people, and if they're going to make you the person you are today. So thank you for sharing that with me. And there are going to be little bumps in the road in everyone's journey, and as you were growing up and as you've got to this present day, what moment in life pushed you to try and aim for this worldwide platform and helped you to try and help other people by being their voice coach? What moment in life really pushed you to be who you are today?
By people not hearing what my own voice was saying.
And yeah, I suppose if people don't really give you that voice, then you have to try and help other people get that voice that you never really had. And I suppose that's sort of my case as well. And because I never really had a voice when I was younger, and you know, helping other people is really what I've wanted from a child. I suppose it's sort of an quite innocent thing to do, saying that you want to help other people and make the world better, but that is truly what I wanted to do from a young age.
It's very noble, Nick. What you're doing is very noble. I mean, when I say noble, of the higher mind, not of the lower mind, but of the higher mind. So you see, it's interesting, isn't it, that our crises have presented us with opportunity to grow. And we've realized, well, those people are not listening to us. Those people wish to oppress, sometimes very viciously and aggressively. So they're obviously not my audience. So where is my audience? And what we've both done is to find a way of creating an audience. I mean, for me, it's a continuous sport of trying to find out who is willing to listen to the betterment of what I wish to communicate in the world about the totality of the human spirit and the way that we can move forward and have the successful lives that I believe we can, bearing in mind that love is all there is. So, what's fascinating for you is that I can see your trajectory, that you're chiseling out or sculpting your own platform, not their platform, but your own platform. And as a result of this, other people who are doing the same thing will notice you and will invite you onto their platform.
Yeah. And yeah, it's definitely been a long, hard journey, and I've had a lot of really tough moments in my life, and there have obviously been highs as well. But I think the faults of the human mind is that they tend to really focus on those lower points, and that is something that I've been trying to get rid of in my life. And
Well, let's look at that because the higher points are wonderful. The trophies, the awards, the successes are wonderful because we begin to realize that we are making an impression on the consciousness of that person or those people. But I've never learned anything by those awards. There haven't been many, but there have been a few, and they've been mighty awards where I've been celebrated by my peers, for example, but my colleagues. But it's the hard stuff that has made me the man that I am.
yeah,
Not by going down, but by realizing this is painful and I'm bleeding, as it were, whether that's literally or metaphorically, I'm bleeding. But actually, what I need to do firstly is to make myself safe and secure. And then what I'm going to do is just allow the energy of the pain just to slowly subside so that I can then review the situation and see, why have I created this? What does it help me achieve within my inner consciousness so that I can then be a greater radiating light in the outer consciousness of the world? Crisis equals opportunity. So I feel that I don't feel that's a clever abstraction. I feel that that's a very useful way. In all situations, detach, feel stillness, and observe. Because we're taught to always react. And I'm a very reactive person. And I know it's always getting me into deep water where I have to challenge myself, or don't do that. Instead, respond.
and yeah, what you said, crisis equals opportunity, and I've never really thought of it like that before, and that's why interviewing people like you is just so grateful, and what would you say was your biggest crisis, your biggest problem that you've had to face in your life, and what's really you've turned upside down and made it from something so bad into something that's pushed you forward?
My greatest issue and the greatest teacher has been the way that the way that I interfaced in my past with people in the positions of authority that wore all the badges and all the right hats, but actually were not fair, were often full of injustice. I was brought up to believe in the respect of my elders. And there were many people around when I was a child who were very respectful people, meaning they were good people. But over these extraordinary years of my life, and nearly 70 years, that I've seen huge changes in the way that we lead and the way that people use their power. And so my biggest challenges have been in relation to the petty leaders or the petty managers, and how I can inform them of their error, but not be patronizing, condescending, aggressive, rude, but just purely and simply by saying, sorry, that's not good enough for me. And that's where my grandfather comes in, because I can remember being very willful. I'm born under the sign of the bull. And so my Taurian self means that I can be very, very strong and very, very willful. And this was obvious. This was being, I was behaving like this when I was a child, which often meant that I was a bull in the china shop and things would be broken or people would be hurt or whatever. Difficult situations would arrive. And I always remember being in the country with my grandfather after some ranting storm that I just gone through. Maybe it was to do with the fact my brother kept hitting me and I protested, which I think is, very rightful. But at the same time, let's not make a whole scene about it. And he called me over. So I would, if I were my grandfather, I would be about this high, standing next to him. And he whispered in my ear, "That was one of the most selfish things I've ever seen you do. Now listen, if you want to be an anarchist, firstly, learn all the ground rules, and then you can change them all. Now go away and say you're sorry." He never shouted. It was always this deep, deep rumbling voice of stillness and the love that shone through his eyes. So that's why I use him. He was evidently a very enlightened being, a man who was always very kind to the people he employed. All the men that worked on his farm, they all loved him because of his integrity.
Yeah, and I think we all need someone like that in our life, just to point out our little mistakes, and then just to help us grow as a person from it and help us grow stronger. Everyone needs someone like your grandfather in their life, because many people sadly don't, and they don't have that motivation to go forward and to be someone that they've wanted to be from a young child.
There's always someone, Nick. There is always someone in all of our lives. There is someone. I think what you're saying, if I may say so, is, do we have the wit to recognize and then acknowledge the teaching when it comes? There's always someone who is kind, who's judicious. It could be somebody standing on a street corner. It could be the person in the post office. As you buy your stamps, they say, thank you for smiling. These little things like that. Thank you for smiling, because that lady, you've just watched gross behavior going on before you because another customer was just being rude because she was angry and impatient, and but projecting it all onto the clerk behind the frosted glass, as it were, in front of you. And then they suddenly turn and say, thank you. That's one of life's teachings, you see. So, one of the things that I try and profess in many of my clients' lives is choose 10 things a day that you can do to be compassionate. It could be just opening a door to somebody as you walk into a grocery store. It could be helping somebody up an escalator. It could be going and knocking on the door of a senior citizen in your community and saying, I'm really sorry, I haven't actually been by, but is there anything I can do for you? Can I do some shopping? Would you like me to clean your windows? Can I make you a cup of tea?
Mm. And yeah, just these small acts of kindness can make a big impact. And yeah, as you said, life does find a way, and we have to try and find that person to try and push us forward, to give us that extra motivation in life. And yeah, it's brilliant. And going on to like my next question, we all have these problems in our life, but speaking more modern and speaking today, what do you think's the greatest problem this world's facing as of now? Obviously, coronavirus is a massive impact on everyone's lives, but if there was anything that you would like to say about that,
Well, about Corona or about
or
what?
about what you believe is the greatest problem that we're
Well, the
facing?
greatest problem is climate change. The greatest problem is that, for the last 50, 60, 70 years that we polluted Mother Earth with the toxic waste from our industrial foundries, we need to wake up to the fact that if we're not going to look after the organism of planet Earth, the Gaia, Mother Earth, that she will last much longer than we will. But the question is that the quality of our lives, the water that we drink, the quality of the air that we breathe, the substance of the way that the climate itself, in terms of the heat or the cool of varying cultures as we move around the world, all of this is being threatened by industrial waste, purely and simply because the conglomerate of corporatocracy wants to make a large sum of money. And often this means, processing certain articles, such as nuclear waste. And then, well, where's the waste aspect? Where's the detritus going to go? Oh, let's just pour it into the earth or pour it into the sea. I mean, this is completely irresponsible. So that's what I feel we need to attend to at this time.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's with someone's stress and with someone's problem, there would always be someone else or a corporate that is making money off it. And with coronavirus, people are losing money from all over the country. Someone is making profit of other people's downfall, and with climate change, destroying our earth and making it making its years weary and making it less and just polluting our earth, which is also affecting us as well, which is um, someone is making money off that. And yeah, and people's greed often call downfall for many others. And that's another fault of the human mind is just to get something that isn't even real. If suddenly the world goes into a crash and if something happens which makes money useless, what would you have to go from then? Money is not really real in the sense of outside our little economy that humans have made, and the world is much, much bigger than just a coin or just a piece of paper with some numbers on it. And we have to realize that.
Mhm. But well, money allows us mobility. That's what it does. Whether it's social mobility, whether it's cultural mobility, whether it's professional mobility, whether it's to do with we wish to afford ourselves a certain lifestyle, it always produces mobility. And what's happening as our world changes is that although we can whiz around the world very quickly, well, not at the moment necessarily, because many of the port authorities are closed as a result of COVID restrictions. But COVID is gone. The issue is that the COVID hasn't left human beings because human beings are still immensely fearful about the whole substance. But, and I'm not being irresponsible. Obviously, many people have lost their lives, but I also have a whole spiritual philosophy about what that is all about, that actually the essence of us is eternal. It doesn't die. It's just our body and the effect that we have as human beings on planet Earth. It comes to a point where there's a point of completion. And then there's another form of energy that takes place, which is what all the great spiritual teachers have ever taught us. There is a death and there is a resurrection. There is a death and there's a resurrection. So, I look upon those people that you were referring to who are perpetrating some of the gross acts with a great deal of compassion, because I know that the reason why they're achieving this doesn't mean to say that I won't say, no, that's inappropriate or that's inaccurate behavior. But the reason why they're achieving it is because they're running scared. Their greed and they're usurping other people, their megalomaniac tendencies like, for example, the past incumbent of one of the most supreme positions of leadership on our planet, namely the President of the United States, very clearly showed us how his disadvantageous or unfortunate way of being was purely based on a bedrock of neuroses. Now that brings out huge compassion in me. I don't feel that getting angry about it is going to help. Do you see? I feel that that's actually just simply exacerbating, amplifying what the problem is all about. I feel what's important is to be the change you want to see. So I don't want to be part of that, but what I do want to be part of is a culture of kindness and a culture of mutual respect and human dignity. And so that's what I perpetrate. I try not to get caught up in vociferous, opinionated discussions, because that's really all about the individual people trying to point score with their egos. I'm much more interested in the behavior of people. A great quote came to me many, many years ago through an amazing African-American lady called Maya Angelou, who is a great poet laureate of the United States of America, who alas died a few years ago. But she was an extraordinary woman. She had the most amazing life. And she said, you know, Mr. Pearce, when you leave, people don't remember what you said, but they always remember the way you made them feel. And so my feeling is, well, do people want to feel comfortable in my presence, or do people want to feel uncomfortable? And if I'm letting the worser side of my nature come forth and and I start protesting, then actually they all just start feeling bad. But if I try and appear to be wise and kind and noble and true, then people, I've noticed, really expand. The heart has an energy field 5,000 times greater than the human brain. Isn't that interesting? So when we meet on a heart level, there is a generating energy that radiates in we human beings. And I feel the heart is the seat of the soul. I mean, look at Diana's heart, this beautiful, beautiful being. I shall never forget the first time I saw her close up. And it was these extraordinary eyes as she grabbed hold of my arms at a private meeting saying, "You will work with me, won't you?" And it was in that moment I was completely mesmerized by her innocence, by her purity, by her humility, by the wonder, the beauty, the majesty, and the magic of her, all in one moment. But it was somehow held in a prism of absolute immediacy. You know, she was so utterly authentic.
Yeah.
And of course I said, no. I said, I'm being set up here. I mean, how could I resist the opportunity? Of course, I'd love to work for you, work with you. And that were the last 2 years of her life. She was very extraordinary.
Yeah, and I can only imagine what it would be like, just to stand up in front of her and to speak with her. And, you've lived this extraordinary life that I can only, and people can only dream of. And you've helped other people through Diana's legacy, and you've helped so many more people, and you've kind of helped everyone, and you've helped me as well, and you've helped me realize how much we can actually be, and to look at certain situations with sorrow and to look at them differently than to be angry. And we have to be the change that we want to be in the world. And I've said that many times, and it's just great to hear you say it as well. And yeah, the world is going through a lot of stressful times at the moment, and people like you really do help ease the pain and help us really find who we are. And how do you resolve your stress? You are such an amazing person, but surely sometimes you can feel a bit down too. And I just like to hear from you how you resolve your stress.
Two primary pathways. Number one, because we're exchanging on an ideas platform, on an ideas level, I sort out the way that I'm thinking, because I know that often when I'm feeling down and I'm berating myself for not doing good or making a mistake or whatever. I know that a mistake, for example, is just a mistake, and that the universe really wants me to take again. So I have a whole series of major maxims that I live my life by. One of them is no regrets, no sentimentality, and no self-pity. Pick yourself up, dust yourself down, put Band-Aid on if you need to, and if you really need to, take a recovery, go for a walk in nature, and then come back and reassess the situation. How could you have been better? How could you have been greater? How could you have helped that person in a much, much more broad context so that they feel ennobled? So I have a whole series of maxims because I have profound spiritual beliefs that there is something very magical and mysterious about the nature of life on planet Earth, and that we are actually all part of that divine intelligence. On a physical level, because we experience the sorrow, the disinclination, the disassociation, the loneliness, the aggression in our bodies, I feel that our bodies need to be healed. And so I have a series of practitioners that I go to allow me to always operate through dynamic stillness. The world teaches us to do, but by doing so much, we build up patterns of stress. And so there are stress hormones rushing through our bodies. And these stress hormones, particularly noradrenaline and cortisol, what they do is to literally wear away or corrode so much of the other vital energy within our beings. However, we can restore our bodies by, for example, going for massage, going for reflexology. If something is going wrong with my body and I'm overheating, so to speak, then I go and see my acupuncturist. Every day, Nick, every day I meditate. Every day I breathe. And because I use my voice as a sounding agent, I often chant or open my voice to inspirational text. But it comes through primarily through relaxation, because I'm very much a doer. And sometimes I can do when my mind is going on and I'm suddenly realizing, oh my God, your body is really tired. Take a recovery. So what I do is every day I lie down with my knees up and I breathe solidly for about 10 minutes. We forget about the breath, even though it is our life force.
Yeah, and I think we all need that time to just let our body just take that relaxation, because our mind's always constantly working, and sometimes we forget how closely our minds and body are connected. And if we feel something in our brain, we can feel it all over our body, and everything works through our brain and our heart. And we need to just take that time to ourselves, maybe get a massage, maybe do a bit of exercise, maybe just relax completely, maybe just close your eyes for a few seconds, maybe enlighten yourself, as you said, through inspirational text. You are a very wise person, and you've probably heard so many quotes and inspirational speeches in your life, maybe even that you've looked over and that you've inspired and created. So I'd like to hear from you. What would you say is a quote or a saying or a phrase that you would live by every day, or you try to live by? It could be either one that you've inspired or created, or just a quote by um, someone who's close to you. So what quote would you say that you try to live by?
God, there's so many.
Oh,
There's so many. But the one that stirs me at the moment very deeply, because when we look outside ourselves, we see a screen for our consciousness. It's not happening to us, it's responding to us. And at the moment, it's all pretty chaotic and people behaving rather badly, in terms of the competitive nature of the ego. And so the one that really moves through me at the moment, again, comes from Maya Angelou, who said, when people tell you their truth, believe them. I love it because there's a note of irony in it. because actually what she's really saying is when somebody behaves badly, don't trust them. Rather than but it's very fairly placed, you know, when somebody tells you their truth, believe them. So before I engage with anybody, I always put them through very, very, very subtle integrity tests. They're non-invasive. Often the person doesn't know what I'm doing, but what it does is allow me to measure, is this someone that I really want to work with, you know? And I'm not talking about the clients that come and see me. I mean the people who want to share with me the platforms that I'm invited onto or that I've created myself. I always put them through integrity tests. And the way that I discern whether they're the people that I would really like to play with, you know, because it's all about having fun, isn't it? I feel it in my heart. If they're true in their heart, then I'll spend time with them. And maybe there are a few things that need to be slightly recalibrated. I know that behaviors will bring them to our joint or mutual interest, so that I can then step forward and say, perhaps if we did it this way, it would be easier to bring about the flow of force, the flow of energy, the success, the abundance, and the joy that we want to really feel.
Yeah, that is just, you know, so perfect and beautiful of how you've just described that. And it's so engaging to see, you know, some that it's obvious to see that Diana picked you, and to see how your her legacy is living through you. And, you know, as you said, you can almost sense someone if they're really heart if their heart is in the right place. And you know, um I always, you know, could get that, you know, first, you know, glance, and to know if someone is truly right in their heart and truly looking for the best things. And, you know, I really do believe you are that person. And, you know, you're very, very busy at the moment. And, you know, I can only thank you for coming on and speaking to me, because this has been truly a once in a lifetime experience that I've had with you. And your enlightening words, it really, it just makes sense with the career that you've chosen into, you know, inspiring people, becoming a voice coach. And so, you know, I would like to know, what would you say your future plans are? You know, you've just brought out an amazing book, that I will definitely, you know, get to reading more of. And it's just amazing how much work you're doing, and you're definitely, you know, overloading your mind with all these amazing, you know, quotes and all this positivity. So yeah, I'd just like to know if you do have any future plans, or if you just like to go with the flow.
Well, you know, I've noticed with my enterprise that it's really, to answer your question, it's really twofold. And that my career is based on really just turning up in the moment and being true.
Yeah.
And being as still as I can to really be present and to observe what other people want, because I'm in service. And so, for example, you know, professional communication is based on the response you get, meaning that if you're communicating effectively, you always get the response you want. If you don't communicate effectively, you don't get the response you want. So what do we do with that? Most people are thwarted in that moment. So what I do is I say, okay, this is an opportunity for change. So let's choose another strategy. What do you need to do? So I tend to be very much in the moment, waiting for a higher being, a higher intelligence to give me the information that I need of where can I best use my abilities. So that's the number one. The number two is that also I love making things. I love constructing things. And my mode of construction is, who can I talk to? Who can I write another book for? How can I develop another program that draws people into an online workshop? How can I, in other words, what I'm doing is associating myself with the fact that I believe that our purpose is to optimize our creativity full of love and joy. so that we can live the greatest and the grandest and the most magical version of ourselves. So I've only just started, so I keep going looking for all these opportunities of how can I be better and better and better? How can I evolve and evolve and evolve? How can I have more and more and more abundance and abundance and abundance? And I don't just mean money, I mean joy and happiness and good friendships and wonderful, wonderful exchanges and amazing times walking in nature with dear friends, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I'm a constructionalist. So I see programs and establishments that I want to create. We meet through the inspiration of Diana. And one of the things that I want to do for Diana, because I've already been approached to write another book from this book, which has just come out, as you know, Diana, the Voice of Change. Show this to the screen once again. Da, 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 da. And I've been asked as a result of the success of that book to write another book, which is very exciting. And I'm meeting some really amazing people who haven't thus far stepped forward, who knew Diana. And so I'm going to incorporate their stories in the book. But all of this is moving forward to the creation of a really beautiful grand project, which is called the Diana Heart Path. And the Diana Heart Path will be a series of workshops all around the world where women can come and men can come to experience co-creativity, creative construction, and communion, heartfelt communion, that we come together and we really experience on a heart level what Diana was all about in terms of her compassion, her empathy, her belief in inclusivity, her utter authenticity. How can we bring these immense ray-like lights from Diana into our lives? Because I believe that her spirit is still with us and wants us to do this.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how, you've already just made a book and now you're making another, and also highlighting voices of other people who haven't spoken out and maybe haven't had that courage for the past 20, I think 24 or so years. And
well, my relationship with Diana was completely confidential, you see. And I mean, very wistfully, during, I think, the last time that we saw each other, as she left and gave me a hug, she said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we turn this into a book? It was very prophetic. But let's not do it until the boys are married. That was just en passant, just in passing, and because I had a confidential relationship with her, and because there was such circus around her, not helped by a number of people that were in service to her, I just kept quiet, absolutely quiet. But then I saw the model of helping her, how it could be written so that it could then serve the women of the world. There's a wonderful Japanese proverb which says, when the women's voices are aroused, the mountains move. And I think it's time to get the mountains moving. The mountains can be the monolith of the establishment that we have around the world, the central government, banking, corporatocracy, or indeed, as we've seen through the crisis of COVID, what's taking place within the health institutions around our world. They're all governed by patriarchal constructs that are often completely inappropriate. So the women and the girls are really writing the next chapter of history, or maybe it should be called her story, not his story, because it sounds like his story, her story. And that I find really extraordinary. You see, I've waited for the time. My effectiveness is always to do with, is this the right time to move? I'm a great believer in this. And that if we try and push things, often it becomes so efforted that we don't achieve what we want. And that creates untold frustration within me, as I've noticed in others. So I try not to create frustration. I try and let the energy keep flowing, 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 flowing. So I've been taught patience. It's one of my greatest weaknesses. I mean, impatience. I've been taught by life patience. And I think I'm beginning to learn what patience means.
yeah, and it does take time, and how you've respected Diana's privacy for all those years, and now you've turned your story with her into a book, and you felt that it was the right time. you know once their once her children, Harry and William, have grown older and they have their own families now. I think Harry's has two children now, and I can remember when, you know, both of them weren't even married, and yeah, it was. They've all grown as people, and we all grow as people in this earth, and I feel like the timing that you've just released this book is the perfect time because I think the world right now is going through a very difficult time. And, sadly, people haven't had that right placement of their minds and they all find themselves in a dark place. And I feel like the person that we need to enlighten us at the moment is Diana. And I feel like you, and now you have just had the most perfect timing to release your story and to release hers as well. So yeah, I'd like to thank you again so
Bless
much.
you. Bless you. It's
Oh,
been wonderful having a conversation with you.
oh, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. And, I know that you're such a busy person, especially now. Everyone wants to hear your story, and I just like to thank you for spending your time with someone like me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.